Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on this live worldwide Sunday edition. We are going to be here for the next 2 hours as we are every Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. And of course, I also come back weekdays, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. Coming up today, I really want to talk with the listeners about the lawlessness of the system and where it's going. And whereas the establishment, state-run media, tries to behave like anyone that questions the official system is a kook, the truth is Congress now has a 6% approval rating. That's the latest numbers coming out from Gallup. 6% approval rating. The president's approval rating is dropping like a rock. And the general public has the least amount of trust ever recorded in the history of modern polling for each other. And I think that that's well-founded. The problem is you can trust individuals and even organizations, from my own research, a lot more than you can trust the government and the Fortune 100 or so. These are purely predatory groups who pride themselves on their deceptiveness, who pride themselves on their absolute, total attack on humanity. And so we're going to be breaking all of that down today. Coming up after the first break. And I want to talk about the problems in society and the lawlessness of the power structure. But then I also want to speak to the subject of real solutions. And there certainly are a lot of real solutions out there that certainly can be deployed. But the biggest solution is simply getting the public to become aware of how the real world works and who the real players are in this world. So when we go to break, we're going to come back and cover all of that. We have a 1-minute break coming up, and then we will come back and get into also some of the latest news. 4 dead, more than 60 injured, New York City train derail nightmare. Dead at 40, the fiery car crash. He wasn't driving with a friend in a Porsche. Carrera GT reportedly ran off the road at high speeds, ran into a pole, and blew up. That's just some of the news on that front. Of course, the really important news, China flies fighter jets into disputed air defense zone. Japan remains defiant. This could really kick off into a wider war with both groups threatening to attack each other. South Korea flying aircraft in. Over in England, the London Guardian is being targeted by the government for reporting on the criminal activities of the U.S. government and the NSA. That is going to be coming up. We're also going to get into pressure building on Boehner for an NSA vote. Meanwhile, the head of the Senate Intelligence Committee and the adjunct have come out and said, hey, get rid of the Constitution, whole cloth. That is coming up today as well. But again, the big issue is I want to focus in on the lies. I want to focus in on the manipulation. I want to focus in on the outright deception that is taking place. And what the fundamental mindset and worldview is of the controllers. All this and more coming up straight ahead on this worldwide broadcast on this Sunday. Again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Now you can watch The Alex Jones Show live as it happens at Infowars.com/show.
You'll find links to all of our content there and a free 15-day trial for Prison Planet TV.
More than 60 movies and documentaries all in one place at Infowars.com/show.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on this live December 1st, 2013, worldwide broadcast. We're here every Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. Central Time, back weekdays, 12 noon to 3 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. Here's what I'm going to do. I am going to go over all of the top stories here just to give you an idea of some of the things that I'm looking at on my desk. And then I want to get into a very dangerous precedent that's being set, not just here, but all over the world under continuity of agenda by major corporations and government think tanks developing a program of absolute tyranny against humanity, a revolution against the Renaissance, against the Enlightenment, against common law, and against really 1,000 years of European war. The Magna Carta is one of the most famous signposts in 1215 to deliver to the people some of the basic checks and balances that have taken 1,000 years, 1,000 years to get codified into common law, are all being erased worldwide. The West was the example of law and justice and prosperity. Not that the West was perfect, but compared to other nations, it was the highest standard. Now the West has been captured by the globalist and is now an engine of evil worldwide. And the abolishment of the family, of private property, of due process, of all the checks and balances that really form the atmosphere of a free society is all being sucked into space right now. We are depressurizing as a society. The shields are down. The walls are now down. On every front, we are now on fire, burning to the ground, if you need a political parallel or parable or analogy. And whenever I take off a few days, and I took off 2 full days, which is a long vacation for me, and only worked half a day the other days, Tuesday through today, I really have time to pull back from the news and pull back from just all the clutter and all the information and just really get freaked out every time I take off a few days and pull back and realize, wow, this is really happening. We have been absolutely on target and absolutely accurate. And the only places that we're not accurate is in the fact that things are much worse than we've said. And then I see the general public, on average, aware that they're being lied to, aware that the system is predatory, but really not having any idea how deep the water is. Folks know they're wet. They're bathed in corruption, bathed in manipulation, bathed in corporate and government discrimination against the common serfs. The population knows that they're literally being drowned in propaganda and social engineering, but they don't know what's swimming in the water. They don't know how deep it is. I have tried to plumb the depths and only find entire new civilizations of evil beneath the depths, beneath the waves. I mean, it is just a whole universe of corruption and fraud and scams, and it's only possible because the free market produced so much wealth and so much freedom and so many choices that it almost gives the evil, well, it doesn't almost, it does, places to hide behind the prosperity. But now it's only facades of prosperity. And every historical, every economic indicator, every cultural indicator shows we are basically going to hell in a handbasket. They've got a Nobel Prize winner in economics coming out saying the stock market's going to melt down and implode. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that inflation is just off the chart. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that that there is massive social engineering going on, and it is pointed at the individual, and it is designed to wreck checks and balances and civilization, and the fruits of the New World Order are everything nasty and stinking and horrible you could ever imagine. Now, I want to read some of the headlines out to you here, and then I want to come back and talk about the revolution of tyranny that's taking place, why there's a revolution of tyranny. I really want to crystallize this. And then we're going to open the phones up to get your take on solutions and ways to counter this and what you think the next year and the next decade and the next 20 years, the next 100 years has in store for humanity. Because we really should, as a culture, as a species, have a discussion about where humanity's going. I'll assure you the establishment is not concerned with Xbox Connect or the NFL. I will assure you the establishment is not concerned with the latest fashions. I will assure you the establishment is not concerned with all of the fake projections they put out to create an artificial habitat, an artificial culture of death to make sure you never realize what's really going on. Oh, I mean, they're interested in the NFL and fashion and culture as a weapon. They designed it. They decide what's popular. They decide what to put out in front of people. They decide how to best screw you up and confuse you. But when it comes to what they're really into, they run like the plague from everything they produce. GMO, aspartame, the additives, fluoride. The globalists all on record are obsessed with not being around any of it. They don't put their children in the government training camps to be dumbed down. Everything they tell you to do, that they put out there on television as the role model of success, is designed to fundamentally destroy you. It's like telling a 2-year-old, go run around in traffic. That's where you'll find the Lucky Charms leprechaun in the pot of gold. A 2-year-old would believe you and walk out into traffic. And that's how I see the general public. And I'm supposed to be a predator and go, well, I'm going to join the elite. The public are a bunch of ugly, dumb, stupid morons who themselves are a bunch of backstabbing rats on average, who would tear my throat out if they could, with exponential envy. So why don't I join the vampire class and feed on them? They're prey animals. That's what they're made for. But I will not do that because I've seen what the establishment's all about, and their fate's even worse than the cattle's fate. But I want to tell the cattle something, the new listeners out there. You are scientifically targeted. And you can live in your own little bubble of denial about this all day. But if you want to turn things around, you're going to have to wake up to the fact you're under attack, number one. And the fact that things are about to get a lot worse, number two. And that there's no hope in beating this by laying down. The only hope is admitting it, getting up on your hind legs, and realizing you're in a war whether you admit it or not.
Everything we said came true. Everything we've done's been right.
But somehow they convinced you our government was different, that there weren't individuals and groups out there that would combine forces to set up a corporate world tyranny. That's what we now face. And you know that the fruits of the New World Order are slavery and bondage. Let me just give you some of the headlines here. Let's just go over some of these important headlines right here today. This is from CNN. China flies fighter jets into disputed air defense zone. Japan remains defiant. South Korea has now been flying fighter jets in the disputed zone. And I want to be clear, folks, this is globalists that have invested in China and the U.S. playing us off against each other. So remember, there's a much bigger game going on here. But the communist Chinese have been expanding worldwide. They've been given the Panama Canal, you name it. And they are definitely expanding into an international defense zone that was already there if you look at the maps. They have massively expanded, in some cases, more than 80 miles out into the ocean. And are saying that international aircraft, American Airlines, you name it, have to ask permission to basically fly just a few miles away from the coast of Japan. This is a serious, serious provocation. And it all shows where the pivot is going, where the United States, under globalist control, while they move all our factories and power plants out of the U.S. to China, while the globalists shut America down, They're busy using what's left of our military to menace the Communist Chinese Party to play ball with them as they devalue the dollar and as the Communist Chinese are the largest holders of so-called U.S. debt. So this is a very, very serious situation. I will assure you it's more important than the star of Fast and Furious dying in a car wreck today, and that's the big top story, of course. We have a nuclear war with China. They've targeted all our cities. They say they may preemptively nuke the United States. If these provocations continue, they publish in newspapers the U.S. cities they're going to target, including the population death tolls, civilian cities they plan to target, and the average trendy can't even find China on a map. But they do know all about how to put on a football jersey and go to a sports bar and act real tough. So I guess I'm kind of a wimpy guy. I'm here talking about geopolitics. When there's football on, folks, that's obviously I'm a bad person. You know, I know about fractional reserve banking, QE Unlimited. I read what all these economists have to say. I'm a conspiracy theorist. Hey, if you're just some schlub, doesn't do any research, doesn't care about freedom, you can just put me down. You're better than me. You just go, oh, that's one of those weirdos. He reads books. Sorry, let me get into the rest of the news here for you. You know, the number one cause of death that's unnatural in this country and worldwide as well is transportation. But, you know, honeybees kill over 200 people a year in the U.S. alone. Wasps kill more than 300. Rattlesnakes, several hundred. Water moccasins, more than 400. But people aren't scared of those. They're scared of great white sharks that kill 5 people a year worldwide on average. Because the movie said you should be afraid of it. And it's the same thing with terrorism. You've got a better chance of dying from a honeybee than you do of dying of a terrorist attack. You can look up those numbers. Even a U.S. News and World Report admits that. About a year after I kept putting out that factoid, I just went and looked up the death numbers, and now that's a well-known meme you hear that honeybees kill more people than terrorism. I hear it everywhere. Just like I said, Obamacare is like the Nigerian email scam where they just rope you into more and more. And now I'm not bragging. It's just interesting to see how we can put a meme out now and see people pick it up. The reason I point this out is they say they want to take all your rights and spy on you and have federalized police and giant armored vehicles and billions of rounds of ammo for Muslim terrorists who the government on record runs overseas. They told Russia if they don't play ball with NATO and Saudi Arabia and let them hand Syria over to al-Qaeda. This was said 2 months ago in mainstream news. BBC reported it, London Guardian, Russian news, but not here, that Saudi Arabia, with the backing of the U.S., people that run our country, would blow up the Winter Olympics coming up in Russia. Would blow them up. That was in the mainstream news. The head of Saudi intelligence said, we will blow up the Olympics if you don't stop fighting al-Qaeda in Syria. But meanwhile, I've got to have some TSA minion narrow their eyes, ask me questions, have a chat down, like play this game like I'm a suspect. It's all about government teaching you you're bad. Government teaching you you're guilty until proven innocent. I can't even go to our ranch we've had since 1829 and camp without a game warden pulling up and demanding to come in the shack or whatever to see if we have illegal deer dead. Because I'm guilty until proven slave. That's how it is. But the government can launder all the drug money, run all the white slavery. That's fine. It's all about we're bad, they're good. No, they're scum. The government's criminal. It's converted over to total tyranny and is trying to get rid of any liberty that's left. That's how this works, folks. You're the enemy. You're the milk cow. You're the blood bag to the vampires, and they're not going to back off. Historically, we've gone past the point of no return. We're going down the rat hole. That's really the big announcement I want to make. We've just got to figure out, those of us that produce, how we're going to hide out during all this and not be sucked dry by the giant 100 million welfare heads and all the government pimps and scum and trash and morons and people that can't even talk or tie their shoelaces. Just giant hordes of scum everywhere, running wild. Excuse me. They'll probably have nuclear war before then. The government's just filled with doddering, nepotism-filled, narcissistic scum. Excuse me. Let me go back to the real threat here. Transportation. Upwards of 300,000 people die a year of transportation-related fatalities. It's like 1 million plus injuries. 4 dead, more than 60 injured in New York City train derailment nightmare. You know why the U.S. has so many derailments? Our trains can't even go above 45 miles an hour because we have the worst train system in the world. The worst train system in the industrialized world. It's a joke because the globalists have had a policy for 50 years to shut this country down. You understand that? They've got you now as a bunch of service workers or bureaucrats or corporate minions with government contracts. They've got you right where they want you. You know why the trains all fly off the tracks constantly? Because the rails are rotting. And you can't go above 45 miles an hour or the train starts jumping. But then they order the train to get there quicker. And so then it flies off the rails. And then they have a bunch of reasons of why it happened. I'm sure they'll end up indicting somebody. 4 dead, 60 injured. Maybe they had some TSA agents on there blessing the tracks. That would have fixed it. Or maybe on the train, maybe they would have grabbed more people's genitals getting on the train. That would have fixed it, because they have that up in New York City, where they literally grab your genitals, search it, have guys with machine guns bugging their eyes out at you when their bosses blew up the World Trade Center, ran the whole Al-Qaeda operation, blew up Building 7 down the street. They all love it. Love it. Oh, but the big news is dead at 40 in fiery car crash. We're so sorry for him. Paul Walker riding with his buddy, and I am sorry. But I'm supposed to only get concerned about one person, like Stalin said. One person dies, it's a tragedy. 10,000 die, it's a statistic. We're going to talk about Black Friday when we come back. Huge technology news. Comet news as well. And so much more. And we're going to get into the globalist master plan, where they want to take you, why they're doing all this, and the NSA. Why is nascent iodine so important?
Nascent iodine is so important because it goes directly to the thyroid. It's not bonded to a salt, which means it doesn't have to be broken down, and it's the most usable form. It's what the body uses. It's what the body is designed to use. If you have low energy levels, if you have pains, if you have thyroid problems, if you don't feel up to par, well, they've proven now that the fluoride and a lack of iodine causes a decreased IQ, because you have all this stuff that builds up inside your system and builds up and builds up. And that's why some people, when they start taking iodine, will have what's called a Herxheimer reaction or a detoxification reaction. But that's a good sign. That means you're detoxifying all that fluoride buildup, the mercury buildup in there, the bromine buildup in your system, and the chlorine buildup in your system. You don't want those things. All of those things have been proven as carcinogens. That's one of the reasons prostate cancer is on the rise too, is because prostate takes up iodine, and the men that are lacking iodine causes the prostate to become cystic and causes the prostate to swell and eventually leads to prostate cancer. There's been an extreme rise in polycystic ovarian disease, PCOS, with women, fibrocystic breast disease, because iodine is stored in the breast tissue, the ovaries, the prostate glands in men. It's utilized by every single cell in the body.
Why does this almost taste good compared to other iodine that tastes horrible? That's because it's real iodine atomic form.
We wanted something that's going to go straight into the bloodstream and straight into the thyroid gland. We wanted to put it in a vegetable glycerin base. That's a USP kosher certified vegetable glycerin base. And that product is not tested on animals. It's vegan friendly, it's gluten free, it's GMO free.
Of all the things I've done, nascent iodine was just absolutely amazing. So we developed with Dr. Group a double strength, low price, InfoWarsLife.com Survival Shield, the atomic nascent iodine, available right now. Let me hit some more headlines. Then in the next segment, I will get into the culture of tyranny and the revolution against common sense, the revolution against prosperity, the revolution against liberty, the revolution against the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, the revolution against the individual. And I'm going to explain why the globalists want it in their own documents and own words, and where they think they're going to take us. And then I'm going to show evidence that they won't take us. They're going to take us straight to hell. Straight to World War III. The globalists are so delusional, folks. 91%, according to the International Atomic Energy Agency, of nuclear reactors are leaking. In the past, they would fix them. They just don't care now. It's like they're homicidal demons trying to kill us. That's what I'm telling you. The establishment is so busy with their mistresses and their boyfriends and partying and being a bunch of narcissists that they have gone nihilistically haywire and have got to be stopped. But the general public's gotten totally decadent and out of their mind as well. It's television. It's the culture. People think that's real. They think, even famous people I know are totally unhappy, obsessed with other Hollywood stars and people, thinking they're living some wonderland, even though they're living 5 doors down from them. And they're all totally unhappy, chasing a carrot that doesn't exist, when absolute enlightenment, absolute Valhalla, absolute energy and information is all around us on this planetoid in deep space, hurtling through the edge of the Milky Way. Whoa! You are not going to find fulfillment with all these turds on TMZ. Unfortunately, most people have not experienced what I've experienced and had a chance to get to know most of the big Hollywood people, been to their houses, you name it. And why do you think over the years, back when I would fly out to L.A. or wherever I got invited, or people would fly me out there, sometimes on private jets, it's like sending their taxi or their driver for you. People say, well, why don't you do it now? I don't have time for it. I've been there, done that 50 times. That those folks are reaching out to me just because they've already been inside the system and know there isn't some grass greener on the other side. There's nothing else. And I'm not telling you about stuff like that to brag. Believe me, 99% of what I've seen in Hollywood and New York, no one will ever even hear. The point is that I'm telling you that so you realize that the system dangles this whole fake culture in your face to make you think you're inadequate and unfulfilled, so you'll buy into their culture thinking it will fulfill you when it's designed to wreck you. If you can go to a beautiful park and look at the sky, or if you can look up at the night sky, or if you can paint a painting, or if you can go to church and feel a connection to God, or if you can be in love, like George Strait says, if you're not loving, you're not living, then you are fulfilled. I've got all this news to cover. I just want to say the system will not empower you. It is there to enslave you and to shudder your mind, because these people want to be God. They want you looking at them. They want you believing their artificial construct, their worldwide Madison Avenue projection of artificial reality, a giant Times Square system where everywhere you go, you're bombarded with their messages. I mean, I got multiple Amber Alerts on my iPhone, my slave phone, my NSA tracker system today, and messages from Obama. I mean, that is so Orwellian, ladies and gentlemen. Even state-run media is flipping out right now about how all the media stage, they lie to them, and they don't even get access anymore. They don't need access. They put out a press release, you regurgitate it, or you lose your job. And so now all the sycophants in the corporate media are freaking out because now they're not even needed. And they're moving to the next phase where you're all going to be out of a job, and then they're going to try to shut down the real media. That's next. And that's all been announced by the Pentagon. I mean, here's what's frustrating about this, folks. 99% of all this, literally, of what I'm telling you is on record white papers, DARPA, the Advanced Defense Laboratories. Our system, the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned of in 1960, is run by offshore megabanks who are eugenicists, transhumanists, who've already decided the course of the world, and you and I aren't in it. And to make that self-fulfilling prophecy reasonable, they have set up a culture and a system to dumb you down and turn you into the most mindless of idiotic animals. And every statistic shows it. Physical IQ going down, dexterity going down, cancer rates off the charts, everything. We are being murdered. Murdered. And the average so-called person doesn't even understand that, or you hear it and you live in a fantasy world, because from the time you were born in your diapers in front of the television, while mama was, you know, in the back doing Lord knows what and daddy wasn't home, the average person was raised by the television set, incrementally screwing you up with fake role models and archetypes until people think they can just say, oh, I don't believe that guy, and then it makes it not true.
I just found me a
Well, ladies and gentlemen, when we come back, I'm going to get into the total culture of lies. Then I'm going to get into new low for Congress. Just 6% approve. Finally lower than car salespeople. It's not fair to car salesmen to compare them to Congress. And then we're going to get into the attack on the free press by the NSA corporate fraud grid. And then I'm going to get into a science stack. And then I will get into the culture of fraud.
Now you can watch the InfoWars Nightly News streaming live as it happens for free.
Check it out at Infowars.com/show.